Hi everyone, welcome to the visual guide for Asphodelos, the First Circle Savage. This is the first Savage raid encounter made available in the Pandemonium raid series in Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker. If you find yourself in flux, chain wiping, flailing in Party Finder, or tormenting your group, let this guide be your saving grace. My name is Miztech and I'll be your raid guide. Heavy Hand will target the primary target with a heavy hitting Tankbuster. Cooldown and heal as necessary. Immediately after, the boss will jump to the center and begin to cast Ethereal Shackles. This will place a specific debuff on 2 players. Shackles of Loneliness will target players with this red debuff. Shackles of Companionship will target players with this purple debuff. At the end of the duration of these debuffs, the affected players will be blasted by AoE circles that apply magic vuln debuffs and also shoot out AoE circles on the 3 closest or furthest players. The purple debuff will throw out small AoE circles to the 3 nearest players, while the red debuff throws out larger circles to the 3 furthest players. To handle this, we have assigned positions for purple baiters inside the boss's hitbox and assign positions for red baiters at the intercardinals at max melee range. In most cases, all melee can arrange themselves for the purple debuff in the center, while the ranged stand at the intercardinals at max melee range for the red. Should a melee get red or a ranged get purple, assign 2 players to be ready to flex their assigned positions should the need arise. In these assignments, all players will satisfy the range requirements of each debuff, while also standing far enough apart to avoid overlapping each other. While all of this is happening, the boss will also cast Warder's Wrath, dealing high raid-wide damage. Shield and heal as necessary. Anytime the boss begins to cast Jailer's Flail, all players must pay close attention to the appearance and or position of his flails. There are 3 possible flail types: a big ball, a donut, or a pointy scythe-ish thingy. The ball signifies an incoming point-blank AoE attack. Players will need to stand at least at max melee range to avoid. The donut signifies an incoming room-wide donut attack. Players will need to stand close to the boss to avoid getting hit. The scythe flails will signify incoming 270-degree side cleaves on the same side and in the same order that the flails are thrown down in. In this first phase, the ball and donut will occur together, while 2 scythe flails will always occur together. Players will have to look closely at the type and order of each flail combo and then react accordingly to avoid getting hit. Next up, the boss will cast Pitiless Flail of Grace or Purgation on the primary tank. This is a 2-hit Tankbuster that will first knock back and apply a magic vulnerability up debuff on the first hit, and then deal either a massive shared blast if it's Grace, or a proximity-based damage blast if it's Purgation on whoever has primary enmity at that point. To handle this, we have the secondary tank provoke during the cast bar and then either stack with a group for Grace or run far away for Purgation. Both tanks will need cooldowns for each hit, so plan accordingly. Knockback immunities also do not work on the first hit, and tanks will need to be careful not to get knocked into the wall. This is followed by another Jailer's Flail cast, and players will have to identify the 2 types of flails and adjust accordingly to dodge both in turn. Next up, Intemperance will have the platform splitting into 9 sections, with each outer section having a pillar with 3 crystal parts to it. When they explode, each crystal will apply its element to players standing in that section, and players will need to alternate between ice and fire with each crystal explosions to avoid damage down debuffs or death. The boss will leap into the center and begin to cast Intemperate Torment. If you look closely, you'll notice that either his raised hand or the hand closer to the ground will be glowing. This indicates which direction the pillars will explode. If the raised hand is glowing, the pillars will explode from the top down. If the lowered hand is glowing, the pillars will explode from the bottom up. Additionally, each round of explosions requires at least 1 player occupying each section, with the exception of the boss's middle section or any section with an exploding purple gem. If not, the sections will explode, debuff all players, and you will probably die. Before we go into patterns and flexing and all the things everyone wants to overcomplicate, let's look at the general idea behind each crystal explosion and what players are fundamentally trying to accomplish. For the first round of explosions, all players will be assigned to one of the 8 outer sections. This explosion will apply the first element to be handled by each player. For the second round of explosions, the east and west platforms all have active purple gems, forcing players to move into one of the sections in the center column. As they move in, each player should take a quick look at their platform to see what their third crystal explosions will be to determine if they need to swap their crystal element or not. If they do, they can move into the north or south section that has the opposite crystal to their element. If they don't need to swap, they can stand in the center section to keep their active element. Finally, for the third and final round of explosions, players can return to their assigned platforms to take the last crystal explosion. This is the super easy pattern of movement, and the raid can follow this movement anytime the south section has 3 ice crystals on it. However, if the south section does not have the 3 ice crystals, 2 players will need to be ready to flex, while all other players can still follow that same movement. In our group, we prefer to have the tank in the north and the damage dealer in either the northwest or northeast act as our flexers, but you can easily assign the player in the south to flex with southwest or southeast as well. Basically, for any pattern that does not have the 3 ice crystals in the south section, the 2 flexors will need to swap their elements during the second explosion, and then instead of returning to their assigned sections for the third explosion, they swap positions to get hit by the appropriate element. Having these 2 flexors ready to go means everyone else can follow the same pattern of movement each time. No need to overcomplicate the movement or worry about specific patterns. During each round of crystal explosions, the boss will also cast Warder's Wrath. Healers beware. Once all 3 crystals explode, the platform will return to normal. Next up, another Pitiless Flail will target the primary tank. Immunity both hits, or tank swap before stacking or running away as necessary. The boss will then cast Shining Cells, and the platform will reform into a circle with alternating white and red patterns. The boss will jump to the center and begin to cast Aether Flail. Players will need to pay close attention to the color of the orbs floating around the boss during the cast, and stand on the opposite color. At the same time, players will also have to look at the flail types and adjust accordingly. In this phase, the left or right flail attacks will be paired with the in or out flail types on top of the exploding color pattern. Always go opposite the left or right flail, stand in the opposite color to the orbs floating around the boss, and then adjust either in or out based on the ball or donut flail. Make sure to stand in this appropriate area until all flail attacks resolve. Next, another Pitiless Flail will target the primary target. Make sure to swap and then stack or run away as necessary. Don't forget your cooldowns. The boss will cast another Aether Flail combo, and the raid will need to adjust into the appropriate section to avoid getting hit. Shackles of Time will target a random player with a debuff. At the end of its duration, whatever color the player is standing on will explode. To handle this, we have the debuff player always stand on a white section, while the rest of the raid stands on red. During this time, the boss will also target the primary tank with another heavy hand Tankbuster. Cooldown and heal as necessary. Next, the boss will cast Slam Shut, deal high raid-wide damage, and return the platform to normal. Fourfold Shackles will mark up 4 players with purple debuffs and 4 players with red debuffs. This mechanic is similar to the Ethereal Shackles in the first phase, except every single player has one this time. To handle this, we have all 4 players stand in the same waymarkers inside the boss's hitbox, while all red players stand at the waymarkers at max melee. To avoid confusion, we use the timers of each debuff to determine who goes where. As soon as the debuffs pop up, each player takes a quick look at their starting timer of 3, 8, 13, or 18, and then moves to waymarkers 1, 2, 3, or 4 respectively. Once everyone is in position, simply stand there and DPS the boss while the mechanic resolves itself. You'll have another Warder's Wrath AoE blast to heal through before the boss casts Intemperance again. This Intemperance phase is handled in the same manner as before, with all players flipping their elements as required and the 2 players flexing as necessary depending on the pattern. However, this time the boss will cast a Jailer's Flail combo that will resolve after the second Temperance explosion. Players will have to keep an eye out on the in or out combo and adjust as appropriate before taking the final explosion. Another Warder's Wrath AoE to heal through before the boss casts Shining Cells and changes the platform once more. Ethereal Shackles will target 2 players with the red and purple debuffs, and all players will have to position themselves on their assigned waymarkers to handle the debuffs. While this is happening, the boss will be casting Aether Chain, and players will have to adjust in their assigned positions into the opposite color of the orbs around the boss during the cast. The adjustment is very slight here, as you don't want to get too close or too far from the debuff players to mess up the mechanic. From here on, you'll need to deal with another Shackles of Time, a Pitiless Flail Tankbuster, more Aether Flails, and a few more Warder's Wrath AoE blasts in a row before the final Enrage cast. The boss should be destroyed before this time, or you will die. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. Up next, we're heading into the second Circle Savage. As always, thanks for watching. Till next time.